The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the crowded diner, casting a sterile glow on the cracked red vinyl booths. A man in a faded army jacket, his left sleeve pinned up where an arm should have been, leaned heavily on a cane as he shuffled toward the counter. His weathered face tightened with each step, until a sharp, sneering voice cut through the hum. "Hey, Gimpy, what's taking so long? Some of us got places to be." The room froze. Who would dare talk to a veteran like that? And what would happen next? The diner smelled of burnt coffee and greasy bacon, a Saturday morning ritual for the regulars at Millie's place. The man with the cane was Tom Hargrove, 62, a retired sergeant who'd left half his body and a chunk of his soul in a dusty Afghan valley 12 years ago. His gray eyes, once sharp as a hawk's, now carried a quiet weight, softened by time but hardened by loss. He came here every week, ordered the same black coffee and blueberry muffin, and tipped generously despite the VA checks that barely covered his rent. The teenage cashier, Ellie, always smiled at him, her braces glinting as she called him Sarge, with a warmth that made his chest ache. Today, though, the air felt different. Behind Tom stood a stranger, mid-30s, slicked-back hair, a tailored suit that screamed corporate climber. He tapped an expensive watch impatiently, his polished loafers clicking on the tile. "Seriously, man, move it," he snapped again, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Heads turned. Ellie's smile faltered as she fumbled with the coffee pot. Tom didn't flinch, just gripped his cane tighter, the rubber tip squeaking against the floor. The question hung unspoken. Would he let it slide, or was something brewing beneath that stoic exterior? Tom reached the counter, his voice low and gravelly. "Morning, Ellie, usual please." He slid a crumpled $5 bill across the scratched formica. The suit guy, let's call him Chad, rolled his eyes dramatically, muttering, "Unbelievable. This is why I hate small towns." Ellie's cheeks flushed as she poured Tom's coffee, steam curling up in lazy wisps. The diner's chatter dimmed, forks pausing mid-bite. Chad's phone buzzed, and he answered it with a bark. "Yeah, I'm stuck behind some cripple at this dump. Be late." The word cripple landed like a slap. Tom's jaw tightened, but he didn't turn. Ellie handed Tom his coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "Ignore him, Sarge," she whispered. Tom nodded, but his knuckles whitened around the cane. Chad pushed past him, elbowing Tom's shoulder as he barked his order, "Double espresso to go and make it quick, sweetheart." The "sweetheart" dripped with condescension. An older woman in a corner booth, Mrs. Delaney, a retired nurse with a steel-gray bun, muttered, "What a jerk," loud enough for her table to snicker. Chad shot her a glare, but his smirk faltered when he noticed more eyes on him. The tension thickened, a storm brewing in the clatter of plates and the hiss of the grill. Tom shuffled to a booth, his cane tapping a slow rhythm. He set his coffee down, the mug clinking softly, and pulled a worn photo from his jacket pocket. A younger him, arm intact, grinning beside a Humvee with 3 buddies. His fingers traced their faces, a ritual he never skipped. Chad's voice cut through again. Oh, great, now he's going to sit there feeling sorry for himself. Pathetic. A few gasps rippled through the diner. Ellie froze, coffee pot in hand. Mrs. Delaney stood, her chair scraping the floor, but Tom raised a hand, calm, deliberate. "Let it be," he rasped. Was he really going to take this? The room held its breath. Chad snorted, grabbing his espresso from Ellie with a flick of his wrist. "This place is a circus," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He turned to leave, but his eyes locked on Tom's pinned sleeve again. "Bet you're real proud of that, huh? Playing the hero card?" The diner went silent, save for the faint drip of a faucet. Tom's gaze lifted, steady and piercing, locking onto Chad's. Something shifted. Chad's smirk twitched. What was Tom about to do? Stick around, this gets good. Tom stood slowly, his cane thudding against the floor like a gavel. The photo fluttered to the table, 3 young faces staring up. He faced Chad, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You ever held a dying kid in your arms, suit? Watched his blood soak the sand while you prayed the chopper'd make it? Chad blinked, mouth half open. Tom stepped closer, his limp heavy but his presence towering. That hero card cost me an arm and 3 brothers. What's your sacrifice? Missing a PowerPoint. The diner erupted. Mrs. Delaney clapped, slow and deliberate. A trucker in a flannel shirt hollered, "Tell him, Sarge." Ellie's eyes glistened, her braces catching the light as she grinned. Chad's face drained of color, his espresso trembling in his hand. He stammered, I didn't mean—" But Tom cut him off. "You didn't think, that's the problem." Chad backed toward the door, but the trucker blocked his path, arms crossed. "Apologize," he growled. Chad's Adam's apple bobbed. Sorry," he mumbled, barely audible. Tom shook his head. "Not to me, to them." He pointed at the photo, his fallen squad. Chad stared, then bolted, the bell above the door jangling wildly as he fled. His espresso splashed across the pavement outside, steaming in the February chill. Tom sank back into the booth, exhaling a shaky breath. Ellie rushed over, sliding a fresh muffin beside his coffee. "On the house, Sarge," she said, voice thick. Mrs. Delaney shuffled up, pressing a gnarled hand to his shoulder. "You're a good man, Tom." The diner buzzed again, but softer now, warm, alive. Tom picked up the photo, his thumb brushing those smiling faces. "Miss you, boys," he murmured. Outside, Chad's car peeled away, tires squealing. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered, but the glow felt brighter somehow. And there it is. Chad mocked a hero and got schooled by courage he'll never understand. What would you have done in that diner? Drop your thoughts below, and if this hit you in the feels, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Heroes like Tom deserve it. See you in the next one.